Okay, cool. Sweet, everybody. So this is the third video and the last one for the semester. This is going to be the explanation for your last project, and it's going to go over just a few things. It should be a much shorter video than the last big one. And we're going to jump right into it because I don't want to waste any of you guys' time. I want to give you plenty of time for what we're going to do now. So as you guys can see, I'm in Photoshop again, and we're not doing a Photoshop project. We're still doing Illustrator, but I wanted to take you guys back to Photoshop to teach you how to finalize your piece so that it looks finished, so that it's done, and then you can bring it into a presentable format. So you can put it on a website or Instagram, or in this case, your guys' portfolio. So what am I talking about? Let's look over here. Let's talk about what we see. I've got my final artwork. I'm done with it. I don't want to do any more because I could just waste time noodling around. And one thing is that there's a lot of different, because of my strategy of how I chose to do this, there's a lot of different versions of marks on here, okay? And let me explain what that means. If we look at this figure, you can see that there's a lot of detail in the fabric that I've placed here, but you can see this highlight that I painted over is just a big brush, and I just kind of went over there and made it a little brighter. You can see that on this camel we got a lot of high fidelity parts of the photo, and then you can see areas where I painted over it to try to help blend it into the stuff that I've put into it, okay? We can see that this whole area here, lots of little detail, lots of realistic environmental pieces. But then we get up to the ship, and I painted most of this ship, and you can see that there's some fuzz, there's total evidential brush marks. It's all just a little inconsistent, and what I want to do is I want to unify this so that everything looks the same. And from a distance, it doesn't look like there's obvious differences between like this figure here and this thing here, okay? So how do we do that? First thing we have to do is we have to take all of our art, because everything here is on different layers and there's a bunch of different stuff going on. We need to flatten it to one big piece. And rather than destroying your file by flattening all of your layers and losing them all, we're going to create a layer that is essentially a copy of all the layers flattened. And how to do that is you're going to go down to the bottom right, add a new layer. We got a new one here. Then on the keyboard, I'm going to hit Alt, Control, Shift, and E. And what that has done is, as you can see here, is it's automatically filled in this new layer that I made, and it's a complete picture of what we have on the canvas. So if I turn that off, and then we can go and turn these off, you guys can see the original. I can go and turn this layer back on, and it's actually just a flat image of all the layers, okay? So now this is good because I can use this, I can work with it, and I don't have to worry about destroying my work, because some reason I might want to go in and change some stuff and add to it or adjust it or resize it. You know, there's a lot of different reasons to keep things without a collapse. So now that we're here, we can go ahead and unify it. So what we're going to do, the strategy that we're going to use is something called noise. And noise is, I'm sure you guys have heard about it, when you see a TV screen that doesn't have a signal, like the old school CRTVs. They have like noise. It's like the static fuzz. That noise is something that we can use in Photoshop, and it's going to take all of those different textures that we have, and it's going to place a layer of noise above it. And what that's going to do is it's going to make a uniform fuzz that goes over everything and makes it look makes it look unified. So like I said, we have all these different textures and stuff, so let's take a look at what it does. How we do it: make sure you're on the layer where you've collapsed everything. Go up to Filter, and then we're going to go down to Noise, and then you're going to go ahead and go to Add Noise. Click. And as you can see, there's an immediate change, and this looks terrible, right? We don't want it to be this aggressive. Right now, mine is set at 3908. That's probably from like an old thing that I've done. Yours probably won't be this big. We definitely don't want it to be that high. We want it to be more so down in the 9s and 10s, okay? Somewhere between 9 and 10. See how the 916? And you don't want to do Gaussian, okay? Because Gaussian's going to go much more aggressive. You want uniform. And you want to stay monochromatic, because if you take that off, Then it's going to take this fuzz and give it a bunch of color. But if you turn this on, it's going to keep the fuzz the color that it is above, and it's not going to change the color space that you have. So hit OK, and now we have it. Now you're wondering, like, it doesn't look too different right now. But if we get close, you can see there's that uniformity now. Everything is together. It's one piece. You know, we have all these different seamed areas where I've mixed a bunch of photos together, and now they all look like they belong from the same photo. And that's good. It's a strategy that we're using to help make this thing feel a little bit more natural. Okay, so just to reiterate and show here, you can see the difference between these parts. I can turn it on and off. Oops, gotta turn this back on. Turn it on and off, and you can see the difference. Just how ingrained it makes it feel, how it makes it act like one big piece. Okay, so we finalized our photo. It's all good. We're gonna go ahead and save it. You're gonna file export it as a PNG or a JPEG. It doesn't really matter for this instance. JPEGs are generally safer bets. And I'm going to go ahead and do that off screen and make sure that it's a lower quality. Export, desktop, done. Okay, now we're done with Photoshop. I'm going to go ahead and close it out. And I'm going to go ahead back into Illustrator. So before we continue with that, I want to go over the next part, and we're going to talk about layout design and what your new project is, okay? And then I'll bring that photo back in a little bit. But let's talk about layout design and what it is first, okay? So layout design is, and you guys are very familiar with this, everybody who has ever read a magazine or a book or went on a website or anywhere that is something that visual that you have to read that doesn't look like just a flat piece of paper with some words on it, that is designed by a layout artist. And these are some samples of layout design. Now there's a couple elements that we're going to focus on in this class. There are a myriad of other elements too that we have to go over in a total design class to get to the quality of some of these samples. But just for you guys, we're going to talk about some of the very, very, very basic stuff that'll help you get closer to this level of quality. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the idea of using a grid. Okay, so a grid, and you guys are all familiar with what a grid is something that helps to align elements on a piece. Okay, and as you guys look over here, we can see this very generic looking brochure doesn't seem too exciting. It's interesting. There's some interesting color choices, interesting shapes, but there's something about it that's working really well. And let me show you why. I'm going to go ahead and I'm over here on the right. I'm going to turn on under ruler and grids. There's this little upside down L right here. Click on that, and that's going to bring a ruler. And you guys can see now you have measurements on the top and on the side. You guys can create guidelines using this ruler. Okay, so once you turn it on, I have it here. I'm going to go ahead and click here, and I'm going to drag, and you guys can see I've dragged like a line from that, and I'm going to bring it over here. And as you can see, if I put it right on the inside of this little hexagon shape, you see how the bottom lines up with those 3 squares right there? Oh, and see how I lost this? What you got to do is you got to go over to guides, and you see just underneath ruler, there's this little button that says show guides. If I click on it, hey, check it out. I have a bunch of guides. And you can see I've already done a few. I've placed them down so you can see how a lot of these things align. So let's take a look at the one I just placed down. You guys can see now what I'm talking about. This blue line here is just a guide. It's going to help me align things. And you can see how a lot of these elements are lined up to an imaginary line that goes down the middle of this piece. And this is just part of the grid. This is a way to make everything feel cohesive, make it feel well made, make it feel easy to understand and read, and it helps break up the page in an interesting way. You guys will see there's some examples where we have like it looks like chaos on the page, but I promise you they all use some kind of a grid. And a grid isn't necessarily like this one here. You see how we have the gray and white squares like we're used to? That is a grid, but that's not necessarily the only kind of grid. A grid in this instance is just defined as a series of shapes that define your building style. You can have grids that are a bunch of circles. You can have grids that are triangles, so on and so forth. We're not going to go too deep into grids. I just want to give you guys an idea of what it looks like. And if you need to, you can go ahead and, if you really want to challenge and go adventurous, you can look up interesting grid layout designs on like Pinterest or something. But for now, a good square grid like this is really simple. And like this one uses a square grid, and this is the most common. I'd say 90% of layout design is a square grid. But yeah, so elements are aligned on a page, and they're made to look really nice. So if I drag one from the top and I bring it down here, you can see how the bottom of these paragraphs line up nice and easy. On the left side here, you can see all of the words and all of the lettering, and some of these shapes all stop on the same line along the way. And I'm sure there's a lot more in here that I just haven't lined up and checked out. Like I bet this line lines up here with this. I bet if we do it now, yep, look at that, boom, lines up right on the bottom of it. So grids are really important, and they're everywhere, and they're common, okay? So I want you guys to use a grid, and I'm gonna show you how to use that in a little bit. Another couple things we can do. Let me turn off the grids real quick. Look at these choices of color and choices of contrast. So how many colors do you see on this page? And if you've said more than one, then you are incorrect. There's only one color, okay? Everything else is a shade. This might be actually blue, so I might be lying, but there's a simple palette here, okay? There's not 1,000 different colors. There's not even 5 colors. There's red, this sort of dark blue-gray, and then white, and then black. And that's all that is needed to make something feel consistent, cohesive, and interesting too. And all of this stuff allows for strong contrast. So you can see in places where they want us to look, places where titles are, or places where important information is, we have a lot of contrast. So over here, we have a white background with black type with a little bit of large bold lettering here. This allows us to look here first. This is the author's way of saying, hey, check this out right now. I want you to look here first. And then everything else here is just other reads. You know how we've talked about primary reads, secondary reads, and tertiary reads, and when you guys are doing composition, this is the primary read. And then everything here is a secondary, tertiary. And you can see it's because there's far less contrast. The type is smaller. The contrast between the red and the white is closer together. And it's not meant to be read first. This part is. And you guys can see too, more grid stuff. Everything's lined up all nice. So you see we have this nice grid line right here. You guys are going to be doing something quite similar. You're going to make a document, a PDF document, where you have to place all your artwork, and it has to look really cool. Most of the time, you're not going to have. Actually, I'd guarantee you guys are not going to have these big blocks of text in your portfolios. I don't want to see that. But what I do want to see is a consistent shape control, where you make all of your stuff line up in a way that makes sense. And I'll show you quick and easy ways to make sure that that happens. Some more fun examples. I really like this one because of the consistent shape. See how it's like this elongated rectangle? It's not quite a diamond, it's a little elongated, but it's consistent. It's placed pretty much everywhere. And they use, once again, a very simple color palette. They have black and white plus a little bit of this sort of purple, and you can see they kind of move between a little blue to like a more cool or warmer purple over on this side of the color. This is that chaotic one I was telling you about that just looks like there's no way it uses a grid, but if you pay attention and you look really closely, everything here, this is more of like a diagonal grid. All of these are lined up to similar points on the page. And they are essentially just turning this whole document. Let's see if we can turn it. If we turn it to the side, you can see that it's using a grid. It's using a square grid just on the side. If I go 45 degrees, which I just did, this is all 45-degree angles. Once again, another good example, very similar, I think pretty much to this one up here. This is a really simple one too, but it once again uses a nice, easy, simple grid. There's a consistent space between this type here and this here, over here and over here. There's equidistant distances between this type here and these distances here. There's generally going to be the same size shapes between a lot of these things, the edges. And yeah, you guys don't have to go crazy. It can be very simple like this. So let's talk about some of the tools you're going to use now. Let's go over to the empty space over here. First thing I want to do is I want to show you guys how to use and manipulate an artboard. Then we're going to talk about rulers and grids. Then we're going to talk about layer management. And then I'm going to talk about, I'm going to demonstrate for you guys. And then I'll shoo you off and you can go make your stuff. So first things first, artboards. As you guys can see, we're going to use a lot of artboards. your stuff is going to have multiple pages. And if I take you over to the example I'm going to provide you guys, we have multiple pages that we're going to put, and each one of these artboards is going to be one page, okay? So this is the little sample I threw together for you guys in a little limited amount of time that I have currently, but this is okay. This is the quality that I find fine for what we're asking for in class, for an intro class. We're just taking artwork, we're aligning it on the page in a nice way, we're titling it, we're putting some interesting stuff in the background, and then that's it. It just has to look nice. So you guys can see each one of these pages has little elements that I've placed in it to give it some interest, and it's consistent for every page. It's the same design on every single one. And that's because what I've done is I have designed this page first, and then I've copied it multiple times, so there's a consistency to it. And I've also made sure that I've left some of these elements that I've copied live so I can change what they say while I'm doing it. So let's go back, I'll show you how to do that, okay? So let's go over here to the empty space. I want to make a new artboard. So one thing you can do is you can go to Edit Artboards on the top right up here. And this is going to give you the opportunity to draw an artboard. And you can draw any size you want generally, but today what I want you guys to do is you're going to draw a standard 9x16. So draw whatever size you want and then go up here. And you can see right now my document is massive just because I was doing the demonstration stuff. We're going to go to width. I'm going to change it to 16 inches. Make sure you guys are in inches and not pixels or centimeters or picas or points. Okay, double check that you're in the correct size format, and I'll show you guys to double check that really quick. So 16 by 9, click, and I'm okay. So this is my page, okay? One thing you're going to notice too is as you guys are doing these things, when you go into Edit Artboard and you click, you guys will see these artboards all have names. This one says 07 Artboard 8, and that's because I have a bunch of different artboards here, and if you look, they all have their own names too. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete all of these just to make sure we're working with square one. Okay, and now this is the only artboard I have, and as you can see, the number in the front changed to 0. But the one in the back here, this stayed the same. It says Artboard 8 still. That's because on these two different areas, this is the actual number of the artboard, and this is the name of the artboard, okay? This is gonna be important for you guys later because the number of the artboard is going to correlate to the number of the page of your PDF. So if this is 01, this is the first page of my PDF, all right? So we have our first page. I've got a nice blank empty canvas or artboard, and we're gonna get started, okay? So the first thing that we're gonna do, I'm gonna create a new layer. And I know how we talked about you don't necessarily need layers, but this is all gonna require a little bit of layer management just to get you guys going really well, okay? So I'm gonna make sure I have a new layer, and I'm gonna start placing elements on this page, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and fill this in. And you know, see how I just drew this? You see how down here, there's this little white space here? That's because when I drew my box, it didn't quite fill it in here. And you know, that sucks. That's boring. It's not fun, or I have to go down and zoom in real quick and then go grab it and try to get it all nice. That's really not an efficient and fun way to work. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna turn on our grid, and I'm gonna show you guys some grid options, and then we're going to use something called snap to or snap to grid, okay? So we go back up here next to where the ruler was, and over to the right of it, you'll see show grid. And I click on that, and here we are, we have a grid. Now this looks horrible. I hate this grid. It is cumbersome, it's in the way. And for you guys, yours might not even be showing above your artboard. Yours might be showing behind your artboard. And I'm gonna show you guys how to change this so it's a lot easier to look at and it's not so crappy. So we're gonna go up to Edit. We're gonna go down to Preferences. You're gonna go down to Guides and Grid. And these are your grid options right here, okay? So you guys can see I have grid in back off. I'll click it on, hit OK. This might be, oh, mine's not changing. Edit, Preferences, Guides and Grids, grid in back. Oh, that's weird. So if you guys want your grid to be in front, which you do, click this off. It should be able to be shown in the front, and then go to Preferences, Edit, back. And what you can do now is, rather than lines, because it's just so much information on the page already, there's too many lines, it's going to get in the way of your guys' ability to think. Go down to dots, click dots, and then you guys can change the color. Okay, you guys have you'll get a color option here. You can change it to whatever you want. I like a nice little neutral gray. Hit OK. Oops, I gotta hit this OK first. You can do grid line every 1 inch. That's these long, thick, bold lines right here. In subdivisions 8, that's just how many little boxes are in the big boxes. I'm going to leave those alone, and I'm going to make sure this is dots, and I'm going to hit OK. And as you can see now, this is much more manageable. I've got simple grids with a couple little dots, much easier to see, and it's not in the way, and I have a much easier time understanding what's on my page. The next thing I'm going to do is we're going to click back on the background, and we're going to go down, and you can see right here we have something called snap options. Snapping is very important for using a grid and for maintaining accuracy. So this first one here is snap to point is off. We don't want snap to point. That's going to be snapping things to the vectors that you guys have on your objects. This could be useful if you're trying to align edges, but there's far more efficient ways to do that. And I don't think we're ever going to go over that in the class, but in the future, if you take a graphic design class, you'll learn those and it makes it easier. But we're going to use this one here, snap to grid, okay? And what this is going to do is it's going to take the points that we have in our objects and it's going to snap them to those little dots that we have here, all right? So I'm going to turn that on. This next one over here is snap to pixel. Never turn this on because if you have a lot of pixels on your screen, it's just going to take forever for you to figure things out. It's not even going to really look like it's doing much. So use the middle one, snap to grid. And now if I make a shape, if I click on the corner and then I go down, you guys can see it's moving in little sharp increments. I'm going to go down to the corner. If we move down, look at that. There's no white. Okay, and you guys can see this little section right here, that little white line. That's not actually the canvas. That's not the artboard. It's the outline that's telling us we've selected our artboard. And I'll show you that later when we go to a different artboard. But yeah, so now we have a perfect shape on our page. It's completely covering it. And now I can mess with it. So I'm going to take the shape. Let's go back to fill. Let's change it to sort of something a little nice and light, maybe a little darker. You got to be careful because I see how I lose my grid. Thankfully, I still have snap to grid on. That's going to keep it nice, but let's do something, yeah, I don't know. We'll do something like this. This is just for demonstration. All right, so I have a new shape, and let's add some fun details. I'm going to go to the pen tool, and I'm going to make sure I stay on this layer. I'm not going to a different layer. And I'm just going to start designing interesting stuff. Okay. Make sure you close off your shapes so that they're usable. Hit V. I'm going to fill this in with maybe a little bit darker. Turn off the stroke. Make sure it's off. Good. So got something interesting there. Maybe I'll take this. I like this angle. So I'll copy this by holding Alt and dragging. And I'll put it over here. And you can do one of two things. You can either try to redraw this shape, or I can right click. I can transform. I can reflect. And it'll give you an option to do horizontal and vertical. I'm going to do vertical first, so it's going to flip it to left and right. Hit OK. And then I'm going to do it again. I'm going to hit transform, reflect, horizontal this time, hit OK, and there we go. Now I got this interesting grouping of shapes, and they're snapped in equally, and I've got a good grid going. Okay. Now let's break this shape up. I'm going to add a new little block. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to look at what I got. You see how I have these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 little dots that kind of help bring this out. I'm going to count down to, like, you know, I don't know, let's see. Let's do 2 by 2. So I'm going to do 2 down, and I'm going to make sure I'm 2 across, so it looks like about right there. And I'll have a nice little corner to start from. And I'm going to go ahead and just draw a shape that goes down along the edge, and I want it to do the same. I'm going to go down and make sure it's 2 by 2 away. 1, 2, 1, 2. And let's change the color a little bit, make it a little bit lighter. And that's cool. Okay, let's copy this, bring it over. I'm going to keep this distance. So I see I have 2 little marks over here. I'm going to go 2 marks over here. So there's an equal distance between these areas. Let's make this one shorter just to give it some interest. You can be also fancy here. Like if you want to, I can take this and copy it, put it behind here, make sure it lines up. And then I can have this guy meet right about there. So it does the same, and I can keep going down, you know, copy, do it again. I think I'll just do this for now, just to give it some interest. I think these are a little too jarring. They're too easy to see. So I'm going to highlight, hold shift and click them. And I'm going to go over here, and there's an opacity marker right underneath stroke. I can go ahead and turn this down. Maybe I'll turn it to like 50. So there's a little bit of see-through. Gives it a little bit more alignment to everything. Let's go ahead and grab one of these. I'm gonna drag it to the right, bring it down, align it with everything, make sure it still has that 2 mark distance, and then I'm gonna bring it across. And this is just a quick idea to put down. This is what you guys can do too. You can sketch out how you want to lay things out, okay? So I kind of don't like this one here. One thing I can do is something like this, where I have a little empty space and I can put like a page number, or I can put a title here. So let's see, I'll move this over maybe a little bit to like right there. And I can have another shape. And then maybe we'll do 2 by 2 still. Okay, so I got that. Now let's go ahead and put a text box in there. We'll leave it lorem ipsum, but I'm gonna make sure I change it to the stuff that I want. So I'm gonna go to align center. I'm gonna change it to, let's go to like, yeah, I don't know, Bank Gothic. Looks terrible, but okay. Turn it up a little bit. Okay, and there we go. I got a good starter. So now I have a nice live text box that'll allow me to type in new things when I want to. Do you guys see how there's this little, I think I've said this before, this little red box on the back end of this text box? That just means there's more text beyond this. So if you ever see that, it means your text is getting cut off, and that's not a good thing. Okay, so you want to figure out why that's happening. Usually what you can do is you can click on this, you can hit Control A, and it'll select everything, and you can delete it, and you can just kind of type in and figure out where you want things to be. All right. I can also take this text box and I can line it to these guys, so there's a nice little middle part. And okay, I like this. Maybe let's create some more contrast. We can check and see if we like the white fill on this a little bit more. Kind of like that. Yeah, not too bad. All right, so this is fine for now. This is just a good quick starter I'm going to play around with, okay? So now let's set this up so we can have multiple pages on our document, and we can work with plenty of stuff, okay? So for you guys, this is what you guys are gonna have, okay? You're gonna have a title page. You're gonna have your very first thing that you've done in this class, which is the image manipulation. You're gonna title it so, and I want you to have the original sketch that you worked on next to the one that you enhanced. You guys are gonna have your digital drawing, your digital painting. You're gonna have the thumbnails for your photo bash on one page, the photo bash itself, your logo design and the iterations you've done, and then your very last page is gonna be a contact page. It's gonna have your email, and I have my website on there. You guys can have your Instagram, you can have anywhere you want your art to be seen. And in total, you should have 8 pages, okay? So let's go back over to this. We have our one artboard now. Let's copy this multiple times so that we can have this original background that we've made plus the new 8 ones that we have. And as you can see too, see how the grid is kind of getting in the way? I'll go turn the grid off. I don't need it now. But the snap is still on, so everything I'm doing will still snap to a grid. I'll still have that accuracy. I just can't see it. So I want to take this and I want to create 7 more pages essentially. So let's go up to Edit Artboard. And you can see we've selected this one again. I'm going to go ahead and just like how we can grab things and move them, you see how I can move this artboard and it's grabbing my art with it, and that's because we have this little box down here checked on, move artboard, or art with artboard. Artwork with artboard. Ugh, I'm so sorry, I'm so tired. Yes, it moves your art with it so you can move it around. If you hold Alt, just like you do with a shape, and you drag, it's gonna copy this, and if you hold Shift, it'll keep it aligned. And I'm gonna do this a few times, like 8 times, or 7 times. And you can see the number is changing. Okay, so you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? So this is a good start. Now, something might happen. You might accidentally do something like this where, oops. While you're doing this, you might click somewhere, okay? And you have a random artboard off to the side. You can't really see it. If you guys click on stuff, if you have your artboard thing and you're trying to draw artboards, if you click on an image, it'll build an artboard behind it. And we really don't want that. So let's see, we have, it changed it now. If you look, we've messed everything up. See how it says 01 and it goes to 03? That's not good, okay? So let's go back, delete. Okay, I'm gonna click on this one. You can hit delete to get rid of that. And if we go back up, it's gonna change it now back to 01, 02, 03. You can also go up to window and we can go to artboards and you'll get a nice little tab that'll help you manage your artboards. And this is also where you can rearrange things. See how we have the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 through 7. You can rearrange things, you can add a new one, you can move them down or up, you can delete them entirely. You guys can alternatively hit Shift-O to get there and open up a new your options to change things. And then we can name things here too. So I'm just gonna click on this and hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Or you can say, literally go in and say like title, image manipulation. It's up to you. This is really helpful when you have large documents, like large PDFs that you're trying to write out. All right, so this is one way to do it. You can also click on this alternatively and it'll give you the actual artboard options. There's not a lot of stuff in here that you need, but just a heads up. So yeah, we've got our pages all set up now. Now we're gonna go in and start populating it with our art, okay? So I'm gonna go in here. I don't want this on my main page. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna delete it, delete that. Might as well delete that too. And we've got everything else here that we want. I'm gonna go ahead and delete this and delete this and delete this. So now the front page and the back page look the same, and we have all of our space for art here. I'm gonna go and close that off. And now this is a good basis for everything that we want. I'm gonna go ahead and lock this layer now. And then I'm gonna go and add a new layer, and I'm gonna work on adding my art, okay? So if we go over to this document here where I show you guys everything, you can see I've laid everything out so that everything has got its own little set of layers. So I have my base where I have the color and everything's laid out. I've got a little bit of variation. I had a little gradient, so it'll make it a little more interesting. Then I add in my art and my boxes for words, and then I have my back cover page, and then I have a whole page or whole layer of just adding in my art. This is good layer management because at any time you guys can change things. You can try to go in and select stuff. And as you can see, if I turn this all off, if I unlock everything and I try to grab stuff, I can very quickly really mess up my piece, and it just sucks. So if you keep everything on its proper layer and you lock the ones you don't use, then you can go ahead and manipulate stuff without having to worry about ruining everything else. Okay? All right, so that was the artboards. We did rulers and grids. We just talked about layer management. We talked about introduction. We did the noise filter. We can go on and grab that picture that I added in, bring it in here. Look at that, look how big it is. And you can see it's got that nice fuzz in there, so everything's uniform. Mine's a little aggressive. You guys might not want it this aggressive, but I think from a distance it looks nice. You can resize this, make sure you hold shift. Oh, it brought us into a new document. We don't want that. We want to go to example portfolio, bring it in, copy. Oh, I wonder why it's doing that. That's weird. Oh, turn that off. Oh, I have to unlock a layer, that's why. Make sure you guys are in your own layers. Okay, make a new layer, or open up your layers where those are at. It should put it in there. There we go. Hold shift, resize it, and you guys can turn on your rulers, add in some grids, some guidelines, so things line up really well. Make sure your snap to is on. You can double check on the right side and the left side. You can see here, and you can see sometimes your document might be a little too big or too small to fit accurately. You just got to get close enough. That's all that matters. Look at that, it's all nice and snug in there. I like that. Okay, you can also grab these too, guys. You can take these and you can delete them. Mine are locked, I think. But yeah, you can turn these off and on, and these should be accessible without having to worry about deleting them. For some reason mine aren't showing up. I have another weird glitch going on. But yeah, this is it. This is your project. This is what you guys are going to do. Title page with your logo, image manipulation, digital drawing, digital painting, thumbnails, photo bash, logo, and then your contact info. When you guys are finished, this is where you go up and you go to File, and this is, instead of exporting, you're going to save as, okay? And we're going to go to down here where it says Adobe Illustrator, save type, go from AI, go down to PDF, name this whatever you want. I'm going to keep an example portfolio for me. Make sure you have Use Artboards on, hit save. It's going to bring up a box like this, and this is important, really, really important, because PDFs are basically holding just as much information as your base working AI files, and those are just massive. They're too big. So we're going to make this a much smaller file. Okay. What's really cool is that if we use Illustrator default, you can open this up in any Illustrator and it'll open up and have all your layers. It'll have all the different shapes and stuff, but we don't want that. We want to flatten it down into just a simple PDF. So I'm going to click on the Adobe PDF preset. We're going to go down to this one right here, PDF X4 2008. All right. You can also go to smallest file size, PDF 1.6, or just regular smallest file size. Okay. I like this one though because it's got a high quality. It doesn't look very different, but it's still small enough and easy to use. Okay. Don't worry about anything else here. Go ahead and hit Save PDF. See, it's going to say Saving PDFX may disable some editing features. This is what you want. Hit OK. And when it's done saving, you guys should have a, one second, portfolio, blah, 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 blah. You guys will have a document, a PDF that looks like this, and you guys can scroll through it and it'll load up all your stuff. And you should be able to email this and show it to people. And this is your final project, okay? So for the rest of school, the rest of the year, which is not very long, you're going through and you're editing. Don't worry about editing the image manipulation. This doesn't need to be edited, but you're gonna go through and based on the feedback that we've given you in class, you're gonna fix your work and you're gonna update it and make it look really good. Remember, I'm gonna be looking at your turned in work and I'm gonna be looking at the new stuff you put in. If I see a considerable effort to make improvement, you will get points in this project towards a very positive grade, okay? So keep that in mind, work really hard, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your semester. I won't see you until next year, and I hope you have a good summer as well. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you guys in class, and like I said before, I just love going to class every day with you guys, so thank you for everything. If you have questions, please comment on this video, like and subscribe, you know, all that stupid crap, and I will get grades into you guys as soon as I can. All right, bye.